Thank you. All right, before we get started, we're having technical difficulties with this, the board sort of updating, so we'll do the best we can. If anyone can't hear us, just let us know. We'll try to speak louder. And we'll try to update this for, it's doing an update of some kind. If it successfully does that, then we'll try to switch over to the more user-friendly and community-friendly. So let's see. We'll start tonight. Let's see, June 1st, 2026. I'll call the Scituate School Committee meeting to order here at 6:07. The Scituate School Committee is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. All right, fantastic. We'll begin and open tonight's meeting with public comment. Just a general reminder that school committee meeting is a meeting of this committee held in public. As such, we follow best practices for an efficient and effective meeting. However, our committee supports an inclusive meeting. We welcome the participation of the public here through public comment. We have a policy, BEDH, to help guide our work there while adhering to MGL Section 20, Chapter 30. We invite and encourage members of the public to come up and speak on any topic on the agenda or within purview of the school committee. And in addition to this opportunity, the school committee invites the public to reach out via email, schoolcommittee@cit.org, if you'd like to do that. We also occasionally hold office hours throughout the year for engagement with our constituents regularly in person and within the community, and happy to talk to people by phone too. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please come on up to the microphone and you can state your name for the record. And we'll also take public comment via Zoom.
Good evening, Joe Gibbons, 223 Gannett Road. I just wanted to publicly, on behalf of people that I know in Scituate, my family, I'd like to thank Peter for his service to the town of Scituate. I don't always agree with Peter, but he was approachable. And we agreed on a lot of things. We sat for a year or 2 years on capital planning. He was the school representative to capital planning. And Peter used a lot of common sense for fiscal matters. And I just like to thank him for his years. And our families go pretty far back. His dad was a student of my father's, and his grandfather was a politician who represented Scituate at the state level. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Anyone else in person, or if there's anyone virtually? I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment. All right, let's move on. We have an approval of minutes for May 18th, 2026. They're in our backup. Any review or questions anyone have ready for those? Okay. Take a motion on our May 18th minutes.
Excuse me. I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to approve the minutes from May 18th, 2026. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Next action item here is appointment of Dr. Tom Robb as our superintendent of schools, pending successful contract negotiations. I'll say that we didn't receive any else, which we typically take as a positive around here, as you know. I did hear, though, in the community, people were feeling very good about the appointment, very supportive. Motion on Rob's appointment.
All right, I will happily make a motion to appoint Dr. Thomas Robb as superintendent of schools.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, a few other appointments also tonight. Dr. Joanne Butcher.
I'll read him.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to introduce Dr. Joanne Boucher as our next Director of Special Education. If she could join us at the table. So after our first search didn't yield an acceptable candidate, we did reopen the search about a month and a half ago and received 8 applications in the second search. Joanne quickly rose to the top as a prospective candidate, and we had a selection committee that represented all special education constituencies. It included our CPAC, our school committee. Thank you, Peter, for representing the school committee, teachers, team chairs, paraprofessionals, and related service providers and principals. After naming Dr. Boucher as a finalist, she spent the day on Friday, May 22nd, doing a site visit at all of our schools. She was interviewing us just as much as we were interviewing her. At the end of the day, we spoke and we shook hands on a contract. We're very excited about that. I did check all of the references that came back flowing. And I think one of the best summaries of her background and experience is what she wrote herself in her cover letter. And with more than 20 years of experience serving students with disabilities, I bring a collaborative, systems-oriented approach grounded in compliance, fiscal responsibility, and program innovation. My career progression from speech-language pathologist to administrator, along with my recent Doctor of Education, has prepared me to lead teams dedicated to providing high-quality services for students with diverse learning needs. I couldn't have put it any better. So I'm very pleased to present Dr. Boucher as our next Director of Special Education.
Here.
Hi, everybody. I'm not used to talking to microphones. My name is Joanne Boucher. I have been in special education my whole career. So I started in 2003 as a speech and language pathologist in the public schools. And I continued in that position for about 7 years. And then I decided to go into administration through my education. And then I entered a position in about 2014. So the last 12 years, I've been an administrator. I've worked at all levels, both as a speech and language pathologist and as an administrator. So I have experience preschool all the way up to high school in both positions. So I feel I have a really solid foundation in understanding students with disabilities. And my goal is to support students in achieving their goals and to support families and our staff in helping our students make progress and just be able to become who they want to be when they grow up and graduate from high school and beyond. So I'm very excited to be here. I've heard wonderful things about Scituate when I talk to people about just exploring new opportunities. Many of the individuals I work with recommended applying here, and then when I told people I was applying here, they were excited. So it's a wonderful community and a school district, and I'm excited to be starting here in July.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Great. Let us vote.
I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to approve Dr. Joanne Boucher as Director of Special.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks so much. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. And to round out our administrative team, I'd like to appoint Mrs. Irene Bull as Director of Business and Finance. What I'm asking the committee is for a 1-year contract extension, and that'll allow me to do a bit of a process next winter into the spring. We didn't get a chance to do that this year. She's been doing a great job, but I think 1-year contract extension gives us a chance to do that.
I'll make a motion that the school committee vote to appoint Ms. Irene Bull as Director of Business.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Thank you very much. That ends all of our administrative appointments for 26, 27. It's been very good.
Have our
Thank you very much. So before we get into the Title IX assessment, I just wanted to mention 2 things. Tomorrow night, right here at 6 o'clock, we're going to have our new school naming task force meeting. I did put out an agenda for everybody, so anybody's welcome to attend that meeting. And we're just going to be going over progress to date and then looking forward. So that'll be right here tomorrow night And then I also, the committee voted on option 3 for the redistricting at their last meeting. I'll be reaching out to the impacted members of the families in class of 2035. So we have that list now. We know exactly who those students are who are at pushing right now in 3rd grade. We're going on the talking gym and having conversations. And I'll be doing that soon before the end of the school year. So should anybody be interested, I just haven't done it yet. So really, we're here very pleased to have Jeff Granatino here, who has worked on our Title IX assessment of the athletic department for Scituate. We heard from a lot of people in September and October last year that there were inequities in our athletic department, and we wanted to take a look at where those were. We wanted to make sure we did a really deep dive. So Jeff has spoken to every constituency: parents, school committee, teachers, students, captains, coaches, the athletic director, to really take a deep dive into the Title IX assessment for us. And I'm real pleased to have him here. He's going to be doing his presentation tonight, and then tomorrow morning we will put the whole presentation online, so everybody in the public will be able to see it. But I wanted the committee to be able to take a look at it first and have a discussion before it went on. So without further ado, let me introduce him. And we have a bit of a slideshow, which I have to freely admit, I used Notebook LM to put together as I'm trying to learn AI and figure out how AI works. It was kind of fun. So while we do have this presentation, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Dr. Rob. I hope everyone can hear me. And I apologize for my kind of casual attire, but with this little contraption here, that's actually this is only the 2nd day I've worn a real shirt in the last month. I've had button-down shirts that working around this contraption, which has to stay on 24/7. So, but I'm glad to be here. I was thrilled to have the opportunity when Dr. Rob reached out to me last fall about looking into a Title IX assessment. I know that there had been a complaint brought forward last year within the athletic department. And there'd been some questions that came up, and I think that happens in every district, especially when there's a new leadership. Dr. Rob came in as the interim around that time, and hearing some of the concerns rather than just kind of guess at it and figure things out on the fly, to do a deep dive and look in and do an internal assessment of the department to see the things that are going well and to identify also those areas that aren't up to speed, especially with regards to Title IX. It's important to do that. A lot of districts do that with special education, or they'll do curriculum audits as well. To do this in the athletic department with the Title IX lens, I think is a great idea. And it really opened up my eyes as far as the things that are going well here in the areas that need some improvement. And my goal throughout the process was to get as much information as I could from a variety of different stakeholders. I do want to highlight, and I can't say everybody, but this seesaw was tireless in getting me information in the business department, numbers going back 5 years. I tried to do about a 5-year glance back at all things, whether it's participation, whether it's budgeting, booster contributions, and a lot of different documents that were out there. And she did a great job trying to keep me up with all the documentation, and it helped. There's still some things that we couldn't gather, and did the best that could from there. But that's actually kind of part and parcel. Tied to some of the things, some of the recommendations that will be coming from this report. But I want to say that this was never a report based on how good or bad the athletic department is. The programs here in Scituate are second to none. The facilities, the town has been very generous over the years and have provided the schools with amazing facilities inside and out. And the success of the teams go without question. This was strictly about looking at adherence to the department's adherence to Title IX expectations. And for those out there that aren't always aware of what Title IX means, the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 mandates that no person in the U.S. shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, denied the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. We hear it all the time, see it all the time. It never doesn't always come to life, but it's come to life here in the athletic realm. For high school sports programs, the federal law requires that schools provide equitable opportunities and treatment for male and female student athletes. This assessment evaluates the Scituate High School's athletics programs compliant with Title IX, focusing on key areas such as participation opportunities, benefits and treatment, and overall accommodation of athletic abilities. The process before we jump into the PowerPoint, the process, as Dr. Rob alluded to, was back in the fall, I started collecting as much data as I could on the participation level, as well as on the financial level. The administration sent out information to parents, to teachers, and athletes. I want to thank Dr. Rob's office. I want to thank Mr. Payne and Principal Arranger, who I know is back there. They reached out to a variety of different stakeholders for me to meet. Anyone had the chance to reach out to me to have conversations with me. I met with some in person, but most were phone calls where I interviewed them with a set collection of questions. And they varied a little bit, whether it's parents, whether it was coaches, whether it was students, but I got a great feedback from all the different participants, and it was helpful and letting me get a good view of what's going on at all levels of the athletic department. The basis of the approach was kind of set in stone by the National Federation of State High School Associations, and when they do Title IX studies, they're looking at a couple different areas, and one is the participation of kind of the key one, and that's a three-pronged approach. And I know folks have maybe had a chance to review the report. It's long. I apologize. I know it's 46 pages as it needs to be, but there was a lot of stuff that we collected. But that participation opportunity focuses on, first off, a substantial proportionality. If you have 50% females in the school enrollment, you should have close to 50% in the athletic realm as well. And you'll see that the high school does a good job of that. And they give you about a 5% wiggle room if you need it. And the athletic department did not need that for the participation numbers. So when you're doing a study, if you hit that, you can stop right there on the participation process. But I took it to the next step, which was the history and continuing practice of expansion, and the number of female programs over the years has been at the same level with boys, if not higher in some areas. And there's been some growth, both on the boys and girls side, but they've been kind of commensurate. There hasn't been one side jumping ahead of the other side at all throughout the last 5 years. And then if you needed anything beyond that, say those first two didn't go well, you could look at what they call the effective accommodation of interest. And that's putting out surveys to see if and where there needs to be growth. Are there programs that aren't being offered that should be being offered? And we have not got to that point here based on the number of the numbers that came through in the participation, as well as in the historical growth of the programs. So that's one part of what I looked at. And then you'll see that we looked at the equivalent benefits and opportunities. And this is what they kind of gave the nickname for an equity walk through the athletic department. So we looked at equipment and supply. We looked at scheduling of games and practice times, travel accommodations, coaching, the hiring practices, the experience, the stipends, locker rooms, practice and competitive facilities, medical and training facilities and services. Publicity, this was the big one, marketing, media services, and promotion of teams. A lot of stuff came up there throughout the process. And then support services, administrative help, so secretarial and clerical support. The third area that we looked at was a review of the financial records. And that's kind of an area where there'll be a number of different recommendations for you to review. And again, that's where Ms. CSAR and the business office stepped up and did a great job helping out, providing as much information as we could. And I had a lot of frank discussions with Athletic Director Payne on this front. And then the final area is administrative compliance, making sure that we have a Title IX officer, which we do here. People to my right, Dr. Lynch, making sure that our policies and procedures reflect the expectations of Title IX at all levels, whether it's in student handbook, coach's handbook, school committee policies. And the district does a nice job there, but there are some areas that we can make some tweaks. And then the Booster Club activity is part of this administrative compliance as well. And I know that the committee has done some work in policy in the last year or two regarding organizations like boosters that are bringing in funds to the schools and having some expectations there. There'll be the boosters in Scituate, and I've been in a number of different districts. And again, for the folks at home, I'm a retired superintendent. I've been in Marshfield the last 9 years of my career. Spent 5 years in Canton. I was an athletic director here in Scituate back in the late 90s. I've been a high school principal, and I've seen a lot of different boosters organizations. Very few match the support and the generosity of the Scituate boosters, which is great. But there's some things that might be able to be done to help make it even work a little bit more effectively with the school department, and again, with the Title IX lands. Some steps that we should probably be taking a look at as a group. I visited the facilities, both inside the school, outside the field, again, as you all know, are amazing. I took a chance, took the opportunity to go to a couple of games at night, both here and in a way. I couldn't get to everything in the few months we had there, but I tried to get a feel for what was going on there. I guess I just want to, before jumping into the PowerPoint, just note that all of that information gave a lot of information that showed where there were some great things going on here at the department. And there also brought forward some areas that we need to work on and find some ways to make improvements. And some of this is based just on good practice. Some of it's based on things that I've seen over the years running school districts and running athletic departments, and that might be able to help the athletic department and the school at large. I want to note that Mr. Payne and his team were very supportive throughout the process, and as I think he had a conversation with me once and said, no, we know we're doing things well, but if there's areas that we need to improve, I want to know that, and we have to make it better. And I think that we want to do anytime you do an assessment like this, again, whether it's SPED, whether it's curriculum, whether it's athletics, there's always ways that you can improve. And I know that's what I tried to do as well when I was a superintendent. So I'm going to walk through the PowerPoint here. It's not that long. It highlights some of the key points throughout the process that I just talked about. But we're not going to be able to cover everything in a 46-page document. If there's questions, though, that you might have afterwards, be happy to try to address them as best we can. Again, each area that I looked at in the report gave you findings and then some recommendations. Those are obviously, some were easy ones to kind of jump right at, some a little bit more extensive, and some involve funding. So I know that we're not all done overnight, but it kind of gives you a game plan that you can take a look at moving forward and see if you can tackle some of them early on with the low hanging fruit, and then work your way through the others. So I'm going to kind of be my PowerPoint guy, and I'll turn this go through it. Is it going to go on the big screen or just that small one?
You might want to.
Oh, I can read my own one. So that's all. So we don't close out looking at the big. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The people online can see it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So again, this is just a kind of a dashboard of the key points, the 4 steps that I kind of just glossed over. Again, Title IX compliance at a glance. The first part we're going to talk about is, based on the participation of female athletes. And again, right now, just a quick little green circle there that we are compliant in those areas. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. The area of equivalent benefits, and those are those 8 areas that we talked about, from equipment to coaching to stipends to facilities to practice times. There are areas there where we're doing very well, but as I said, there's some that need some help. Overall, the facilities are fantastic, but when you look at areas like game schedule, some the prime time is what the process looks at, and night games, 6 o'clock games or 7 o'clock games under the lights are something that we try to take a look at. And some of the areas that some of the groups that I met with, whether it's just looking at the schedules or talking to team parents, there were areas where it wasn't always equitable as far as how many night games they're both getting as opposed to. So that's an area that we want to take a look at. Just some easy suggestion there. Medical triage is there. Not that we have a MASH unit here, but just the scheduling of meeting with the trainer. The trainer does a fantastic job. He has a fantastic facility in there to meet the needs of the kids. Some of the things that came back to me in talking to the students was that a lot of times athletes who had games later in the afternoon or in the early evening were coming down to get taped while people were getting ready either for the bus to get out to go to an early game or a home 4 o'clock game. And I think, again, talk about some solutions there, but it was a challenge, and it tended to be more boys sports, having a night game, jumping in front of, say, a girls field hockey or a girls soccer person going to get taped, and they weren't playing for a couple of hours. So a lot of the things, besides numbers and whether it's budget participation, many of the things in the equivalent benefits section are tied to kind of like intangible. You don't see it on a piece of paper, but they feel it when they're in their athletic setting, whether it's in the pre-game or during the game or post-game. So that's where this came from a lot, that they just felt they were being kind of pushed around, talking about the female athletes when it was coming to get help. Although the help, again, was fantastic. Also, there was some concerns brought forward regarding home and away coverage of the athletic trainer. And at times, sometimes home girls games were getting no medical coverage while the trainer was away. And with one incident that comes up in the report where a girl was injured and there was no training. So we wanted to try to avoid those situations when possible. And the financials, again, this is an area that I think needs to be really looked at closely by the administration. Talking to Mr. Payne, the athletic budget is really kind of just a budget that gets rolled forward every year. So it's, right now it's about $1 million, budget, just under $1 million, I think, at FY27. And each year it is set, and there's a bit of a small increase, say 2 to 3%, and then, you know, for lack of a better term, all the spending is kind of, they kind of back into the number. So, I will say that coaches across the board, male, female coaches, girls programs, boys programs, pretty much got what they were hoping for. There was sometimes where there was some discrepancies, and they're cited there in the report. But if they needed something, say mid-year, Mr. Payne found a way to try to get that, and they had the number, which is great. But when you're trying to plan accordingly, especially if you're trying to plan to make sure that the spending is done equitably between boys and girls programs, you can't really do that. You have to, and again, not everyone's budget people. I had luck with having great business managers when I was a superintendent, but you know, you really need to have a needs-based budget that's set in the athletic department, like you would on the school side of the budget. And each year, sit down and come up with some of those numbers that you're looking for field hockey, for golf, for hockey, for football, and that's your real number. And then, you know, you might be able to hit it, you might not be able to hit it, cut back some, but at least you're going to know that the dollars that you're talking about are based on an equitable approach to each program. And right now, you can't. And actually, you'll see when you go through the numbers that even with the numbers that aren't the final numbers for the year, what's putting to the base budget that's kind of rolled forward, there's about a 10% discrepancy between how much is budgeted for the female boys programs as opposed to the girls programs. So again, at the end of the day, and that's one of those things that I was talking about earlier, we couldn't get everything we wanted to, and Miss Seesaw did everything she could, and business department did everything they could, but you couldn't quite tell how much was spent specifically on each program to say, hey, were the numbers equitable? Again, equitable doesn't always mean equal. You know, some of the programs need more money because they're larger costs associated with it, but they should be an equitable approach to the process. And it's hard to see that. So we'll talk more about that further. And then in the administrative part, step 4, that's where we talked about the boosters a lot. I mean, we have the policies are in place now as far as where they're communicated. That might need a little help. You know, right now we have a coach's handbook that Payne shared with me, but it hasn't been updated since the 10th year. And you know, we want to make sure that is updated with all the policies, and especially the communication tools for the coaches and for the athletes. Communication is something that's really important. That was noted a couple times with some of the stakeholders. But more importantly, the area of the boosters. Again, we're talking about organizations that do great work for our kids. They bring in, on average, about $165,000 a year, above and beyond the operating budget. So you have $1 million budget right now, almost 16, 17%. You know, more is added to the budget through the help of the boosters. And right now, the school committee, the high school administration, the athletic department really have no controls. Not that they want to control them, keep them from both, but they have no way of knowing what's coming and going. And again, that just adds to some confusion when you're trying to look at is the budget being equitably distributed across all sports. So, jump right into that. Was a long beginning. I apologize, but I want to move forward to the next slide. This, those that can see it, gives you that substantial proportionality. Again, right now, over the last 5 years, we've had about 49.9% of the school enrollment is female. And in that same period of time, 49.3% of the athletes are female. So obviously well within that 5% safe harbor range that they give you. And that's great. I mean, that's super, the programs, and the participation, of female athletes being the same as the boys is great to see. And I think it, again, goes back to what I said earlier, our programs here in Scituate are phenomenal. And there's a lot of interest and they have a lot of success, and success breeds more, and engagement and more involvement. So that's going well. If you want to go to the next slide, we're sustaining the equity through expansion. Again, there hasn't been a ton of new programs over the years. I think just before this 5-year window is when the girls golf program started. There's been some JV and winter cheerleading squads added. There's been unified sports, which has been phenomenal. And again, they've done great success for the students, and that engages both boys and female athletes. And also, while a varsity program on paper was lost in the girls hockey program, the athletic department worked really hard and have a co-op team so that those girls that still did want to play hockey in Scituate were able to join up with Norwell and Abington, as you all know, and keep that rolling. But if you look, each year there's about 30 programs, female programs, just like 29.2 male programs. When you look at the varsity and the JV programs, and that's been pretty consistent over the last 5 years. I think there was 150 programs if you add them all up each year over for the girls and about 146 for the boys in that same period of time. So the consistency there and the slight growth that's happened, it's and there's been boys program, I think doesn't reflect that the boys varsity volleyball program was added as well during this period of time. But there's been consistent growth for the girls as much as the boys programs in that period of time. Want to go to the next one? This is the equity walk I was talking about, equivalent benefits and opportunities. Some of the areas that have gone well. You know, the basics of travel. Kids are going to the games on yellow buses for the most part. There's some teams need more. There is some concerns that were brought up regarding coaches and the luxury buses that come with tournament runs and Super Bowls or championship games. And from what I could gather, when those did happen, they were typically funded by the boosters, not in the athletic budget. But that gets back to that whole area of oversight over some of the spending done by the boosters. We want to have an idea on that. And while everyone felt they got the equitable treatment on the buses, there are some programs that had to drive, coaches had to drive, which isn't always the norm. I mean, I've seen it in some districts, but it causes issues. It's something that I think one of the recommendations that I made are again one of those cost recommendations. But having coaches drive and then still be responsible for oversight of the players is a challenge. And in an area that's really not based on Title IX, but I did highlight it in the report, the number of teams that students have to drive to themselves to the games is a concern. As a parent, as an administrator, retired administrator, I would not feel great having as many students driving to games, to practices, whether it's swimming, whether it's golf, whether it's gymnastics, whether it's but there's a handful. And some of the concerns brought forward by parents on that front were that a lot of the newer drivers were almost feeling pressured to have to drive peers. And again, as you know, the first year driving is supposed to be solo. And so I know years ago, when I was athletic director, there was a strict no drive anything, but it's a hockey practice in the morning at 5 o'clock, or a swim down in Person Walker in Duxbury, or now over at Lincoln or Canal in Weymouth. And kids would jump on buses to go to practice at 5:30 in the morning. I'm not saying they have to do that right now, but you might want to take a look at it, and that's in the recommendation based on the concerns of so many students driving to and from. And again, the idea of coaches having to take their eye off kids, be focused on the road, and not be able to be able to manage the kids is not always great. Uniform cycles, I think there's a pretty set cycle in place now, and I did note that Mr. Payne was working to have kids involved in the process too. When the team did have new uniforms coming up, they would get their feedback. The facility obviously is great. Coaching stipends was an area part of the equity walk, part of the finances for the program. Stipends, as I'm trying to explain to everybody in the process, it's obviously a contractual matter. And I think there were some concerns that some teams that were kind of like teams in like seasons were varying a little bit more than they had in the past. I believe that some of those changes have been made, rectified those concerns. You always run into whether or not these lower or higher than they should be based on peer districts, nearby districts. So Scituate getting what the Marshall coach is getting versus what the Hingham coaches are getting. And that might not always happen, but that's a part of the negotiation process. And the union obviously advocates for their members, both the teachers and those that are taking part in extracurricular responsibilities. And the school committee has their administrative side of the bargaining table. And the only way, if there's going to be changes, they can't be just done arbitrarily. You can't do it without the negotiating process, collective bargaining process. So I can say that the girls softball coach is getting what the boys baseball coach is getting. The girls lacrosse coach is getting what the boys lacrosse coach is getting. And the girls hockey coach is getting what the boys hockey coach is getting. So that's what you're looking for in the big run. Are those numbers as high as their peer districts are? Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But again, that's really part of the negotiating process and separate from the Title IX process. Equipment and supplies, kind of the middle of the road where there was some positives, some negatives. Equipment and supply distribution. Some of the teams were getting a little bit more. At least they felt they were getting more on the boys' side of the programs than they were on the girls' program. Some of the girls actually felt that they were getting kind of like hand-me-downs from the boys' program. That the boys got a new net, say in baseball. Then the previous net went down to the softball. And again, a lot of this information is coming without being able to see all the purchases and where they went. It was hard to see, what was appropriate or not. But based on input from coaches and from the players and parents, we did the best we could. Medical training access, I talked about that. Again, the trainer is highly qualified. Bill Solar trainer, works hard, but there were some concerns about, again, mainly around the scheduling of kids getting in to see the trainer before games and bumping into other athletes who were playing much later in the day. The marketing and publicity was brought up, and both good and bad. They felt that under Principal Arranger and under Mr. Payne, there was much more attention focused on the athletic programs and success being done by both the boys and girls programs, but also from parents and coaches and some students felt that there was more of a push to be promoting the male programs over the female programs and more enough for social media. Sometimes they felt that they were being left out. And so that was a concern that was brought up quite a bit. And I have some recommendations in the report for that. And then the areas that kind of had the red flags, again, the prime time scheduling of games, the numbers showed that there was just more, whether it's lacrosse, whether obviously football is going to play at night, since like you put into the football field. But there's other sports, whether it's field hockey, whether it's lacrosse, soccer, felt that the boys programs were getting a little bit more prime time scheduling than they were. Coaching turnover. There's been a lot of turnover, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, and seems to be more that turnover on the female side than the boys side. And sometimes that's a good thing. Maybe the change is needed, but it just seems to be a little bit more tumult in the coaching ranks on the female side. And that's always hard to kind of create continuity in a program and success in a program. It's constant change going on. And the process behind hiring coaches, I think, is something that needs to be looked at within the report. I talked about, whether it's hiring committees that were made up for female coaches that were made up predominantly of males, with no female adults part of the team, or the way that some of the programs were being promoted, for some of the coaching vacancies were being promoted and giving folks kind of an edge over others when they come into the process. So I think some clarity has to happen there in the process and make it a little more uniform. While this was not an overarching issue, it was kind of part of that equipment and the distribution of equipment. Softball field is probably one of the nicest softball fields in the area. minus the fact that the fence, again, sure, there was lots of planning done when the field was done. They have the temporary fence, back in the day, they used to call it snow fence, because you'd have to take it down if there was snow and stuff in the early spring. But that temporary fence for softball has created a real issue. I think that was probably one of the first things I heard of from students, from parents, from coaches, that you have this beautiful field and baseball fields great, the football, soccer, well, field 1, field 2, field, let's call them that, it's easier, are all state of the art. But to not always have that fence up to the softball, and I know the way it was designed, it's not perfect for windy days, but it's been there for a number of years now, and solutions, there's been a concern for a number of years, and the solution has come forward. And I think that there really should be some focus put on that. I went to a couple games in spring myself just to see it, and the fence has been down 2 games I was at, and the wind wasn't a real issue. And I think for the girls, it's just a matter of pride. They want to be able to have the fence. They see the boys have a beautiful field with a permanent fence. The girls don't. And on top of that, oftentimes they were being asked to either put it up or to take it down. And they might have some help one way or the other, but sometimes they felt, it was really unfair of them, getting ready for games, have to be put the fences for the field. That doesn't happen in other sports. You're not having the football guys put up the pads around the end zone or the yard markers. There's actually a group of interns, I think that, which is great, student interns that do a lot of that work before those games on the field 1. One of the recommendations I think to those folks help out with the fence and making sure that it's up on a more permanent basis so that the girls have that same feeling of their own enclosed field. But also, it's a big field, and when you have games going on, and I actually saw it, there was a group of youngsters down far away on the other end. They were still in the field play if the ball got out there, and they were just passing around the cross ball. And that's a softball field for that time frame. After 5 o'clock, you have youth sports. I'm sure there's other sports that are going to be coming in, whether it's high school or youth. But if you have that fence up there all the time, they're not going to worry about whether it's cross ball comes, during the game. So those are areas that I think need to be looked at, and again, are part of the recommendations in the report. You want to move to the next one? Again, 1 and 2. These are just kind of an area of spotlights. Softball versus baseball fencing. I don't want to keep on keeping that up. Girls and boys golf. Again, girls golf is fairly new. I think it's about 6 or 7 years. I know my daughter is a junior here in high school when they started bringing that forward. And one area, besides some early concerns around just having the gear and the equipment, just the scheduling of the events. I think there was only about 10 or 12 matches slated for the girls, even up to this year. And the boys have a slate of 18. And again, there's more boys golf teams than girls, so that's an issue. Not every school has a girls golf team, but when I looked at other areas that had girls golf, say Duxbury or Hingham or even Marshfield, which is brand new, they started there after I left. They were having 14, 16, 17 matches a year. So I think I should have said this at the beginning. I know that Mr. Payne and his department and Mr. Ranger and high school administration are already kind of tackling some of these issues. And I believe that they might have had a few more matches added, or they're going to be having them added in future schedule, which is great. And but as I put this together, I couldn't track all the things that they were already starting to work on. I just wanted to kind of put forth the concerns and the successes that were brought to my attention. But as far as the scheduling for the girls, and not just the matches, but the preseason scheduling for getting ready for the season. And I know there was a huge add-on this year with a golf simulator that was purchased for the golf program, so that the girls could hit in, even if it was bad weather and the course was wet or the driving range was closed, they could do things. But that's still the one thing that they can do, and have to rotate a lot of people. But early on, they were not getting common either facilities or practice time or obviously match time that the boys were getting. Again, the boys play in the fall, and so the conditions are a lot different than they are in late March, early April. That's kind of part of the concern, but everyone knows that weather's gonna be bad and it's gonna be wet. So I think a little more foresight into what might be able to be done, whether it's moving them down to the Winslows down in in Green Harbor more consistently, providing them with plenty of time to plan for it. Sometimes they did get it, they found it that day and they were scurrying around for rides. It was kind of seemed like they were just kind of the afterthought. I know that's how the parents and the players and coaches felt. And there wasn't always a great plan in place that they prepare. And, again, everyone's struggling with it, but it just seemed like there was not a lot of steps taken beforehand that could have helped them through that situation. And as I mentioned earlier, the transportation on the yellow buses is pretty consistent and pretty equitable. You do have those coaches that were purchased by boosters, predominantly for any sports that were making it deep into the playoff run. There was something that was probably one of the first emails I got from parents and talked about when I met with some of the females athletes, that when the boys were at the Super Bowl, again, with coaches purchased by the boosters, which is great. The girls cheerleading squad, which is a big part of the fall success as well, had a private coach, but it was more like a bachelor or bachelorette bus with like strobe lights and neon lights, and not quite the setting you would want to have for a high school athletic program, boys or girls. And it just kind of set a tone that was kind of concerning for many of the parents. And actually, that was one of the more vocal groups that came out when I first started this. And I shared the information meeting with Dr. Rob, so that he would be aware of it, and he was. So that's listed there. You want to? Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I should have said that. Yeah. If something jumps out, go for it.
It's so much information.
I know, and if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. I listen.
I know.
I'll be here all night.
Like you said, 4 to 6 pages.
Yeah.
So much information and fantastic information to have. I just think people have a few questions. So
Sure.
might want to.
Yeah, before you forget what we covered, go for it.
Question or,
Well, I feel like the report's going out tomorrow, night to the public, so I just would love to have conversations with my colleagues and with you and the experts, like at a higher level, not going into the weeds so much, because there's, like Nicole said, there is so much detail.
Right.
But I appreciate that you're talking about the good work that's being done, and I don't disagree that there is. And we have a lot of systems that have problems.
Yep.
Like serious problems. I'm looking at this picture of this bus.
Yep.
And I can't get over how upset I am about that. And that's just one part of this. There's a quote in here that there's never been a budget done for athletics. It's just been like 3% or every year, and that's just like, what are we doing? So I would just love for the committee to have a chance to talk with you about what could these systems look like that would start the repair. Like it's a financial system, it's a hiring system, it's an evaluation system, it's an accountability system, it's a transportation. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of this that I appreciate getting into the weeds, but I think we can see just from the stories you've shared that I really want to hear about, like, what's the repair of the systems that we need to start doing, because our task is going to be to give central office a charge to fix this. So, with your expertise and with my colleagues' expertise, I'd really like to talk about systems, not the people. Not as much anyway, but I think the people are doing, I don't think there's any ill will from any people in the district. So I think it's a systems level problem, and I'd like to get off the system, but I'll let my colleagues jump in there.
I have a lot of why questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why isn't, but I don't know, maybe you have insight into that, but why hasn't the budget been tracked properly? Why were you unable to garner certain piece of information or components that might be important to really understand the why from the athletics department?
So, a quick, for instance, on that question and tying into the budget, as I said, a lot of reports of expenditures were shared with me, but the way they were done, how it was got to me was no fault, but just the way it was done, you can see expenditures, but you had no way of knowing what athletic department, what team it was going towards. So I had, $150,000, say, of equipment and supplies, that was purchased in FY 24. I couldn't tell you how much was done for each team. What it went to. I might have an idea, you know, if it's going for helmet repair or Rydell for shoulder pad repair, then other football, but I couldn't do that across the board, and it would have taken for the forensic person hours to do that. So I think there are programs out there, like the budgeting programs, for sure, in the business department you use to track spending. I think that there just needs to be a look, and I don't have all the programs out there, but you know, there are programs that will allow you to better delineate where the money's going towards. I think the big thing though, and this is the big picture of what you're talking about, Mr. Prokowski, is that to create a budget, like you would ask a high school principal or an elementary principal to create a budget for their school, you go grade by grade, well, department by department, what are the needs, and come up with a list. You might have a big wish list and you put it all together and okay, you gotta cut back 2% or 3% or whatever to make it work, but you would know that the golf teams have everything that they need, and it's equitable. Boys and the girls are getting the same amount of golf balls and the same type of golf balls, the same shirts or whatever it might be. And you can go through each sport like that. And then at the end of the day, if the number is, you know, $250,000 in supplies, you'll be able to say that across each sport, this is how much is being budgeted. Now, things come up. And obviously, you know, there's more games that are played that you make the playoffs, so you're spending more on transportation, and that happens. Or you need more balls for some team. If you're, say, baseball makes a team tournament, softball makes a team tournament, you're getting more balls that might have more than you would have had budgeted. But at least you have a basis by which you can say, sure, that the numbers being put together in an equitable fashion. Right now, you just don't have it. And I think everyone's making the best effort to meet the needs of all the teams. And like I said, and this was across the board, almost every coach to a T said, if we needed something, we can go to Scott, we can get it, which is great. You have the money for it, but it would be better if everything that you needed was there on day one and was purchased, and you knew where it was coming from and why. There's a why to why the money was spent on that. Right now, it's kind of catch as catch can, and you don't want to be in that condition. You wouldn't do that at the high school for the math department and say, oh, you know, actually we need 100 more votes now in February. You won't work like that. So I think just putting together the budget, just like you would at the school level, at the department level, early in the year. I mean, you start the process probably in October, so late September, early October, you start doing that. No reason Mr. Payne, and I think Mr. Payne wants to. It wasn't a matter of him not wanting to do that, but he had a process that he felt was given to him, and he followed that process. But it's not a great process, especially when you're trying to guarantee that this equity from pipeline lands. And then when you throw into that the money that comes in from the boosters, which is fantastic, you have no idea how much that's swaying one way or the other. The spending on the programs. So the girls and boys hockey teams might be getting equal amounts, but it's hard to tell.
Well, and also, you know, this idea that in the equity walk, base coaching stipend, we have a green. And if you read that report, the football boosters are supplementing stipends for coaches. So it actually isn't equitable, and we don't get anything in front of us so our coaches are getting paid and we have no idea. So like, I don't even know that check is.
Well, let's check.
Right?
Well, from what the school department is putting forward in the budget, it's mostly compliant. I mean, I brought up some areas, but if we went into a couple of slides, there's a couple of slides on the boosters. And again, those are the biggest thing there, and I'm not going to get into the weeds with that, because again, we could be here all night. There needs to be accountability for the school department for the money. You have a policy in place that you had last year, I think, and there's state law that says this money has to come into the school, whether it's the boosters, whether it's the PTO, whether it's any organization that's giving money to the school. They've raised money using the school's name. It has to come into the school, and again, not to keep it from that. It's going to be spent the way they want to spend it. They can raise as much as they want to raise, but it really should, in a nutshell, come to you as a gift, goes into an activity account that can be set up by your new interim business manager, your business manager, and that money can be tracked. And if there are coaching stipends, sometimes boosters do help with volunteers and give them a stipend. That has to be taxed. I mean, it's taxable income. So those things aren't happening. And it's not a lot of heavy lifting to do. It's a change of practice, but it's really something that's the right thing to do. And it's the legal thing to do. It's from a Title IX. It's something that should really happen. Again, how they want to spend that money is still going to be, up to them. But it's going to be coming through the activity count process and not just them spending as they want, whether they're a 501c3 or not. Not all of them are 501c3s. Many of them are just, local groups that are getting together to do what they can to help their sons or daughters' teams. And that's the essence of boosters, and it's great stuff. But the boosters are not exempt from being part of the Title IX process. And that money does sway things. And if just an instance, if baseball was getting 20 grand more in booster funding than the softball team, it's the legal responsibility of the school district to make up that 20 grand. And you don't even know what you don't know right now, which is part of the issue. So you need to have that money coming through the business department.
So we updated our policy and we are looking to make those changes prior to the secretary audit even.
Yeah.
To get more transparency in terms of booster spending, and also that equals mutual spending as another branch of that. So it's we've had the simulator come before us this year, but I think part of our directive to the district has to be centered around exactly what you described, and really providing us with. At this point, it's almost like the bundle. But just I don't even know what the appropriate is, but quite frequently, and it's going to have to be a group effort here in terms of boosters. Parents who run boosters are definitely thankless volunteer work.
Amazing work.
But I mean, it's really important for equity, and it's really important that we're doing this right. So we all have to work together to fix it.
I mean, there's a quick little flow chart, and you might have, if you guys have a chance to take a sneak peek at the PowerPoint. And again, this will be for everyone to look at, but fundraising gets approved. You accept the monies, deposit in the joint account, and then it gets distributed down the road. And that's why it's not limiting their work they want to do. It's just giving it a little bit more structure and allowing you folks to have a better idea of what's being spent. And if you need to redirect money in the athletic budget based on the amount that's coming to one program over another, then at least and if the athletic budget is being done from a zero-based kind of budget each year, you're going to have a much better understanding how much is going into those programs. Right now, neither of those are happening, and it's causing an issue.
The same approach with hiring practices. There should be no different protocol or approach than we hire anyone for official funds in any capacity. And the structure of those committees looks different depending on what job it is that we're hiring for. But again, asking Dr. Robin's team with this corrective action plan to include that with those structure of hiring approaches. It's not a very sound practice in place for anything. I definitely appreciate where you're coming from, Jerry, on to get to the next step. And I think, in the 46 page report, there is section by section of the start of that loop. Yeah, we have the recommendations that are solved. And we kind of been going on. It's followed by a very clear set of address each one. But I think I would recommend that we let Mr. Renton going because I think we've read the report. Most people will not read the full report, but I think it's important to keep going with the opportunity just to keep I know it's a little tedious, but I do think it's important to kind of keep going.
I'll be a little less tedious. I apologize if that's the case.
Already read.
Right.
I think for people who haven't read it, it's their first time hearing this. I do think it's really important to keep going. Even though I know we want to jump in and start fixing, and that's our instinct, and that's good instinct, but I would appreciate it going.
And just so you know as well, I shared with Dr. Rob and Dr. Lynch the other day that while my work is putting this together and coming in to present taxpayers, I want this to work here well with them, and I will, make myself available to them as they're putting things together. If they need to bounce something off me, not that I have all the answers, but I have some experiences, and I'd be happy to kind of communicate with them if they have any concerns down the road, they're bringing some of these plans in place. Okay, so I will go a little bit more quickly here, the other folks speak as well. So the next part was again talked about the coaching changes and the turbulence there. And again, sometimes change is good, but you have in the last couple of years 8 new coaches on the female side, 2 on the boys side. So that's kind of, again, we have great coaches. We have state champions. We have coach of the year folks. We have someone like Captain Stewart, who's been mainstay in this athletic program for 40 years. And so we're lucky to have those people. But the process that you allude to seems to vary from position to position. Sometimes it's a full committee, sometimes it's a phone call and a conversation, one-on-one or with a small group as opposed to a larger group. And I think, and Mr. Pan and I talked about that. I know he wants to have some continuity to that, uniformity to it. Because right now it is a little different each one, and you're just setting yourself up for complaints or concerns, or someone feels that they were not treated fairly. If it's not a similar process for each new hire, they have a right to make that complaint. And then at the end of the day, and the district is the one that's be the one that has to deal with, committee's gonna be the one that has to deal with that. So there needs to be some more structure to that and have a similar process across the board, boys and girls teams, having it be as gender effective as possible on the makeup of the teams. To have a female coach position that has 5 or 6 adult men, 2 female students is great, but no female coaches or staff members or parents on a certain committee. This doesn't look good for the district. Again, I talked about it before as far as the training and the time concerns, as far as kids racing to get on the bus and having to wait behind some of the athletes who might have games later in the day. That's tended to be more based on a boy-girl dynamic. And I think that a schedule needs to be put in place. That's one of the recommendations for you to have that so that people aren't feeling as if they're being put upon if they're trying to get tape before their game. Someone else has 3 hours to get it done. The financial review to the next one, talked about that already, but again, even in the basis of how the budget's done now, the spending from what I could gather over the years, the average was about 54% was being spent on supplies for the male team, equipment supplies, 45.7. So you had almost 10% difference built into a number that wasn't really reflective of what was actually spent. So the foresight or the forethought was a 10% difference. Again, what was the difference at the end? I couldn't tell from what I had. I mean, there was a lot of numbers and a lot of reports, but it was almost impossible to decide how much was spent on a male team as opposed to a female team. So that again, budgeting programming is not that good yet. That will maybe be a little bit more up to date. That will allow them to show those differences. And again, we talked about the rollover budget, which just has to go. That's not a great way to do it. Zero at the budget. The coach submits the itemized needs. The AD will build up that bottom-up budget and present it to the committee, like all the other departments. And there's changes that need to be made. They're made, but at least you'll have a basis by which you can tell if spending is being done in concurrence with line expectations. Couple more here. Again, the boosters, 21 teams, I believe, have supportive boosters. Some of the numbers I got were able to be called through the 990s that 501c3 would have to file, but a lot of the boosters don't have 501c3, so they spent a lot of time giving me their numbers, what they spent it on, and it's all spent on important things, and they're all the teams are lucky to have these boosters and the work that they're doing. But again, the enormity of it, $165,000 on average being added to a $1 million budget, that's a lot. And the fact that it's not coming through you folks, something that really needs to be looked at. And another, I don't want to be the dead horse there, but another thing that is recommended, and this actually happened in Marshfield a couple years back, and I know in Canton they had one as well. A lot of the teams just don't have the numbers to be a booster organization stand up on its own, but they would put together a group booster program that could help some of those teams that don't have the ability to do it themselves. It'd be group fundraising, and I know that they might help pay for jackets, or they might be able to pay for certain things that aren't in the athletic budget for them, or if they need an extra bus or something. But at least they have a place to go, and it's something I can just look down the street to Marshfield and people what they're doing. I know one of our school committee members has been huge in the formation of that a couple years back. I think it's helping some of those teams because not everybody has an army of, lacrosse players or field hockey players or football players that, can get you 30, 40, 100 parents. Some of the small programs, they don't have the ability to do that kind of fundraising. If you have a booster program that helps support some of the smaller programs, that's something that can address some of these concerns. Again, we talked about the legal reality of the outside funding. Everyone's best interest is in play here when they raise those monies, but it creates a scenario that I can't underestimate for you folks the importance of it. That money ties into the timeline expectations for the district, even if it is through boosters. So we want to take a look at that of all the recommendations. Again, the next slide is about that flow chart that we talked about. Fundraising, acceptance, deposit, distribution. It does not limit funding. That's one thing we really want to make clear. Boosters are doing great work. We want them to continue to do that work. There just needs to be some structure in place so that the school district is not caught blind in some of these areas. So then at the end is just a couple quick, strategic action plans. When it comes to scheduling facilities, mandating equitable prime time and that game schedules. Beginning of the year, not okay, maybe middle of the year we'll change the game from 4 to 7. Have it all set laid out. And I think some of that is starting to happen more, but it just felt like the girls teams noted that they had very fewer games under the lights of some of the boys. When it comes to softball fencing, either have DPW do it or the custodians do it or these student interns do it. But to have one team have to lug that out there on their own when no other team is really put a line to do that, other than football might carry out blocking dummies and that kind of stuff. But a fence as a girl to try to get ready for a game, it's a cumbersome task, and it really is not fair. Pre-planning the spring golf. Again, fall golf's a whole different animal. Conditions are great. Course is good condition. There's fewer players in the spring. Everyone's trying to jump out there and get the season going, while girls golf is trying to get their season going. It's not a real equitable approach. So pre-plan some of that practice scheduling so that it takes into account, it's going to be wet, it's going to be snowy, it's going to be cold. So have some plans in place that provide them an appropriate pre-season. And again, the simulator is a huge first step, and that's not a cheap endeavor. I know it goes to cost, so that's great, but I think more of that planning needs to happen forward. Staffing and support, implement the athletic training schedule. I think make sure that folks know you get a football game at 7, you should be hanging around the training at 3:30 when soccer or field hockey or whatever else is trying to get their taken done. Really prioritizing the home events over away events for the trainer. I know it's trainer can only be so many places, but when you go on the road, the expectation is that their home team has a trainer that's going to be available for your players. And if you're leaving your own home games unattended, that's not a great thing that you want to do. Coach's handbook needs to be in place. I know Payne said that one was kind of given to him and it hasn't really been updated much. It's not a huge process to update the handbook. You guys, that's your job. You guys are always updating your handbook to your policies. But the coach's handbook, ensuring that it has all the timeline expectations in there as well. It's something that needs to be done, and that could be a good summer project for the department. When it comes to budget modernization, again, the rollover budget really has to stop, and a more intense kind of bottom-up budget creation process needs to be put in place. Getting that athletic budgeting software updated so that you know exactly where the dollars are going. Look quickly and find out what is being spent, how much is left, and how much is going to each of the programs. So you have an idea if there's an equitable approach to the budget. And again, that doesn't mean equal approach. There's going to be some programs that need more money than a female program, but it's based on size, it's based on the safety measures that are involved with it, but there's an equitable approach to the budgeting, and right now you just can't see that happening. Enforcing from the administrative compliance, enforcing your new policy KCD, so that all funding comes through you folks. Booster approved events. I mean, right now, there's a zillion events that have happened, and you probably approved lots of things that happen, PTO down at Gates or whatever happening. But the same thing, if there's fundraising going on, boosters, folks need to know what's happening there. And then taking a look at a district-wide umbrella booster program to help those programs that don't have the numbers to support their own boosters. So that's the PowerPoint, but obviously I'm happy to talk more and hear specific questions that you might have. And I'm not going anywhere as far as they do their work here. Happy to help Dr. Rob and Dr. Lynch, Principal Ranger, and Athletic Campaign as they do this work and move forward.
Thank you so much for the work, and for the time you spent with parents and caregivers and members and students, athletes. The comprehensive report, so well put together, so it's very easy to read, and it's very kind of set of those some clear action steps here. I don't know before my colleagues, but it felt clear what rose to the top of the work that we did, so that makes our job a little bit easier too for our directive to the district. So we really appreciate you doing this work.
My pleasure.
We're qualified to do it based on the background too. Just having that knowledge base is pretty. I do want to recognize Dr. Rob and these others too, just for taking this on. I think it's something that with all of the things that have been going on in our district and change and throwing us those big changes. You could have waited, you could have done a lot of things, but you took it on without even a second thought. That was the right thing to do, and something that our committee fully supports and in every practice of this school district. So thank you for spearheading from your all that you've done so far, and you heard this next step. So I think some thoughts.
I just only because this is my last meeting. Right? I mean, well, first of all, I have an interest. My son Zach, and if anyone in this town, he enjoys going to all the events when anyone. Yeah, he wants to go across game right now, but so first of all, again, thank you so much for doing this. I want to say that I'm surprised by it, but I don't think I really was, other than the budget piece.
Yeah.
That's where it would be, I guess, the base of. I have a ton of or a bunch of questions, and just finish my last meeting. I'll take it here, but the first question relative to the budget is, I recognize this whole issue with the boosters, and it might maybe discount some of the folks who are putting in the effort, but hopefully not. But when we find out what the boosters is spending their money on, is that something that we might have to absorb into our budget?
If
So
you
it
were,
could have a reverse effect. We have to give more money to athletics rather than taking money away and going from the bottom up.
or, you know, it's really, when you look at those numbers that they're giving, it's based on proportionality of like teams. So softball, baseball, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, girls soccer, boys soccer. If you see one team getting a lot more with the boosters, then that money will not get, whether it's adding to the bottom line or just diverting money. So say it's baseball. I'm not saying that Bill's the Jefferson City, whatever it was, just for an instance. Now you get $20,000, sorry, and the boys with boosters, then that athletic number that's being put forth by the athletic department might be 20 grand less. So that money can go to the girls program.
Right.
You know, if you're going by the letter of the law.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of, I mean, not to get into, but I'm personally involved in a couple, and just
Yeah.
relative to hockey, it can be very difficult because you have a tryout, you have 3 towns, you only have maybe 6 participants, so it's hard to do the equity conversion there, you know, that could create some.
Yeah, and that's, I didn't bring it up in your PowerPoint, but I mean, there was a great example there that the boosters help fund the boys team to get their own locker room at Pembroke, which is great. So they're meant to like deal with crowds when they're waiting for another team to get in or out. They retrofitted it for Scituate. They were willing to do the same for the girls program. And I talked to Coach about that, and she decided that two things. That money might be able to be used for other things, the girls program, which is great. You know, she could have said, no, I want a lot more too. But she also noted that, you just said, Peter, it's a three school team. And so you're more or less forcing Norwell and Abington to say, okay, now this is gonna be our home rink when we like to play the ball or we like to play over in Rockland. And they kind of split it up as far as best they could for the home games. So she said, no thanks. So, that's
So
what.
I'm just saying relative to the cost. I know that
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, I know that we did look in, I believe, an increase in our athletics budget to do with ice time,
Yeah.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So. And again, I hate to use an example, but, and I love everything that every boosters team does. I don't want to take away, but. If you have one team in Scituate, boys hockey team, two hockey teams, JV and varsity, and you have maybe 40 kids participating, and you have a girls tryout with 5 girls participating, you're not gonna make it.
No, well, that's going back to that idea. It doesn't have to be equal. You know, you have to
Right.
look at proportionality of it. And so if the girls team has, 30% fewer participants, then that budget might have a 30% sway in it, and that's okay.
Okay.
You're making the best effort to make it equitable. But again, football, everyone looks at, it's usually the biggest team. It has probably over 100 players, freshman through senior. And the cost of helmets and shoulder pads and all of those things that come along with it are greater than we're gonna have in cross-country track. So that's never gonna be the same. So you're not out of line from a title line sense when that happens. As long as you're making the best effort to make it a proportional approach to the budget. Again, right now, you don't even know what the proportionality of it is.
And a couple of other comments,
Yeah.
it's been mentioned that the more successful teams have bigger expenses because they go on in the tournament and whatever, and I think a lot of it's referees and field reserve and things like that,
Yeah.
but are we finding that more that the boy teams are more successful from the girls generally? I think that might be something to do, like, why are the boys teams more successful if that's the case, or why are the girls, is it more money, or is it the coaching, or what is it? But ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
Why makes the team successful and why are they meeting those goals?
The goal of this project wasn't really looking into the success of the program, although you're not off. Obviously there's been some great successes on the boys side, there's been some on the girls side as well. And those increase the cost, but if you find yourself increasing the budget to pay for extra buses and extra rest because the boys lacrosse and the football team is going further in the playoffs, that's not in violation of Title IX. Those are just costs that came up that were, I mean, you put together that budget back in October, that was equitable. If things happen because of the success of a team, that doesn't all of a sudden make it inequitable. If you follow, and but and there's not a need to say, okay, now we're gonna have to spend another $10,000 on softball because baseball went to the finals. You don't have to worry about that.
I know, it's all very helpful. I'm really intrigued. I'm kind of sad that I'm not going to be involved in this going forward, but I think that it's great. And I just hope that the outcome is, well, I think that we'll get there.
Reading the. One thing that struck me, was that. When asked about boys' sports, if they were getting what they needed, they feel like everything was fine, but when the girls were like, no, it's not fine.
It was, and again, that's, I mean, you want everyone to be feeling as if they're being well represented. And the fact that the boys were, that's not a bad thing in my mind, but it's noteworthy to your point that there weren't as many complaints coming to me from the boys athletes or their coaches as opposed to the athletes from coaches and parents, female athletes. There were some concerns. Again, they alluded to earlier, a lot of them were the intangibles. Something you might not see the spreadsheet. It's just that feeling of the culture's a little bit more swayed towards the boys. It's hard to sit there and make a blanket statement based on that kind of hearsay or that intangibility. But when you mix that with the information and the data that we have, it kind of leads it on that path. Well,
I know we have in our budget the stipends for all coaches, assistant coaches, and I was very surprised to see how much. Hey, is that
Have you ever found that in other districts?
I've seen boosters that will, again, not supplementing, say, a coach that's already on a stipend from school. But a lot of programs will have volunteers that are there to help if out of college or they have time from their job, they want to help out. And I'm guessing that's where some of those stipends went, not to existing coaches, but to volunteer coaches. So it's my couldn't tell, obviously, from me, because I think I couldn't see how much was spent on those coaches. But in theory, any number, any payment that's made for services rendered, really by law taxable. And that's one of those things too. We ran into this in Marshfield in a totally different animal, but we had a huge music program that had lessons after school at the high school for elementary on up to high school kids, and they had some of our teachers and other music teachers that were getting paid from those families to do the $30 for a half hour, whatever the rate was. But none of they were using our time, our space after hours to do that. We ended up having to bring that money into these activity accounts and have taxes taken out. Because again, even though we weren't doing it, we were allowing it to happen on premise and people getting paid a salary without full taxing in. So we had to change it. Didn't go over greatly with those folks. I mean, we're getting a little less money, but we need to, if they're going to use our space to do that, we need to make sure we're providing the law and same happen here with volunteer coaches that might get a stipend.
Does that bring up safety issues too? We have people on our campus who are just like getting stipends.
Well, I'm guessing, and I'm sure the volunteers, whether we're getting paid or not, they go through the story process. They go through the story process, so
Somebody
they know. Well, I mean, and there's a lot. I mean, I think in the report, yeah, exactly. In the report, the number of volunteer coaches dwarfed on the boys' side, dwarfed those of the female teams. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was something along the line of 15 to like 15 for any given year. There's about 50 male volunteers as opposed to 15 on the girls' side, and not all of them getting paid, obviously, but some of them were. And it wasn't something I came up with. It was on the some of those 990 reports were listed with some money went.
Regarding the like town and the district-wide boosters, I think a number of years ago, Norwell did like sports boosters in one pot for the sports and another for like the arts. And you said you did it in Marshfield. Find a lot of pushback.
Well, it wasn't done in Marshfield the way like we didn't take away existing booster programs. This was a booster program that was put together more to help those teams that did not have any booster program itself. So there's still football boosters and hockey boosters. Still hockey boosters there, here. But you would have a district-wide one to help those less organized or enabled to put together a full boosters program for their team. And some of it may go to, I know like when we did some field work this past year at Marshfield, they used some of the money raised by that district-wide boosters program to help some of the costs of that project. Canton is another one where I used to work years ago. They actually moved away from team-wide boosters to have just one boosters for the whole district. That's a big task, and I don't know if there's benefits to that, and there's negative bonus to that as well. And that's a big thing to take on, but it can be done. Some districts do.
Related to that, I imagine for any boosters that don't have an official 501c3, they absolutely should not be fundraising at all. So you would have to really establish something pretty quickly for them to be fundraising at all. Because the absolute also, I mean, there's a lot. That's also just a very easy one to do if you don't have some 501c3 or you're invested in a wide one. To me, actually, think it's a little easy, maybe in this moment to establish, even though I am sure that.
Again, at the end of the day, that money is still going to be theirs. It's just a matter of accountability. So
Yeah.
that's all you
Just how it flows. I mean, people understand why.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just wanted to go back to, it's really just a comment to echo what Janice was saying about the girls. Interesting that the boys felt like they were getting what they needed and the girls didn't. And you called it sort of an intangible. And I would just like to push back on that and remind us that just because it's not quantitative data, doesn't mean it's not data, like it is qualitative data, and if you read that report, you can actually triangulate around what parents said, what coaches were saying, and what the girls were saying, that make it real evidence that there's a culture problem. And that goes back to systems and leadership, and so I want to honor what our female coaches, our coaches of female athletes, and what the female athletes are saying, and not call it that it's not a number, that it is less somehow, because I don't think it is. There's a lot of qualitative data in there that gives us really good information about what's happening.
Very.
So, yeah. Well, no, I think, so is this PowerPoint going into the, because I know you mentioned the. Was it the beach bus?
Yeah.
I remember seeing that going down Front Street. And, but I didn't realize that this is a picture in the report, and I don't think people realize that. And I may be wrong, but it looks like there's a stripper pole
100%.
in the blues bus. And that was to go in front of us. Absolutely.
Under 18.
Yeah.
On that bus.
Thank you for.
No, that's okay. And I want to know, that was not a point that I missed. I think I was trying to be a little bit euphemistic. I think the language there.
But people will see that.
Oh, yeah.
It's very clear.
Well, I'm glad you.
Yeah, I thought too.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was really important.
Yeah, Nicole, I'm wondering like, what do we do to help? You know,
Yeah.
that's
what
a
I
lot
was
of
gonna
this.
say.
Okay,
That was a mess.
yeah, what?
Yeah, so the
help you.
strategic action plans here that.
Yeah.
So it does have, starts with a very solid foundation.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like, gonna be a talk, I guess, the language I heard you say was corrective action plan of some kind, and then, you know, in terms of the timeline, obviously. This, but like, fall, ish.
Early fall.
Early
I'm
fall.
committed to a corrective action plan. And Jeff and I have talked a lot over the last year, and I told him, I said, don't hold anything back. Let us know what's going on. This is our chance to fix it, to work on it. And we should take it, we own it. And we'll put together a corrective action plan on everything. But in a timeline too, because some of the things like you mentioned are immediate fixes, we can quickly, other things takes some more time. It's more investment. We'll do a corrective action plan in a timeline. And the committee will see that and approve that.
I think sooner than that, we need to work on the whole approval process.
Yeah.
Not just the uses, but what we talked about. Those,
We have that
we have-
mechanism.
we did.
We just need to,
Yeah.
Get the
I think
word
some
out.
school committees do those every week. It's a standard item agenda, and I think in the past we had talked about they do it as a consent agenda. So I think it's something you just gotta get into the habit of doing, and I know that the PTOs are spending a lot.
Yeah.
And so, for example, like, they are gonna need us to do it frequently.
Yeah.
And boosters will too, so we're gonna have to do it. We'll just have to be coming.
Thank you for saying that. And then you have Mrs. Wilbur on a report for the 15th. It won't be everything, but we'll certainly right.
Yeah, I think next fall. Okay. Probably with that. Could you get us a timeline or like a rough or sort of like a step one of like you digested this report as a district and sort of taking Mr. Granitino's initial recommendations and giving us sort of just like almost like a bridge between this and the actual corrective action plan, just so we're, you know, I just want to make sure we're frequently checking in.
You know, the next
I
meeting.
said fall, but yeah, okay.
Maybe
Like
what
for
goes-
fall.
are you thinking like what goes into the like, we can do this immediately?
Yeah,
The little level.
But
This is like second level, it's
yeah.
gonna take us a minute, or third level is gonna be the longest, longest bit of stuff. Yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
Sure.
Yeah,
And just a location.
Of like,
Yeah,
what can happen immediately, what. Yeah, I was gonna ask if it would be possible for us to see like drafty draft.
Yes.
Or because they, that way we can, sort of help, ask more questions and tighten it up, so like maybe, for September or something.
All right. Any other questions before we know? I will be revisiting this, a lot. Next month.
Thank you again. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed the opportunity to do this and learned a lot. Thank you. Make a lot of great changes.
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess just because we need to check. And we'll check on the technology.
Just second.
Nope.
Do you want me to wheel
Oh, Ms. Brennan, I'm sorry, you're taking a break? Is that?
Yes, that's
Yep,
sorry.
you got it, you got it. Excellent.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, teaching and learning and health services.
Oh, I see.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about the nursing team. Tonight I'll be sharing updates on what our department does, what's been happening over the past year, a few things on the horizon that we're excited about, and how we support our community. So when you think about school nursing, the traditional things probably come to mind, taking care of students and the things that you see happening in the office. However, there is so much more that goes on scenes. We look at the logistics of maintaining health records, all aspects of medication management, developing health plans, medical wellness initiatives, collaborating with safety partners and emergency plans, are all things that we do that directly impact and support health and safety of the district. First, we'll talk about that physical care. Fun slide. So we use electronic medical records to document all of our visits, medications, screenings, and our system provides statistical reports like this one. As of Friday, our nurses have had over 25,000 visits to their health offices and have given over 13,000 medications. We are a busy. Yeah, I love that song. Something exciting on the horizon is a new version of our electronic medical record system that will be rolling out this fall. This will include a significant upgrade, which will help our team better monitor student immunization compliance and state regulations. And regarding compliance, this is an example of compliance at work with our field trips. To ensure all students can safely attend field trips without interruption to their medical care. The nurses review every roster and each student's medical record, developing individualized and needed. And over the past year, changes to those field trip protocols have changed significantly. This required updates to our protocols, staff retraining, one-on-one meetings with families and students. Final review is then complete before departure to ensure all regulations are met. This process has been completed 197 times. Yeah, so many field trips. The same review process applies to our foreign exchange students that we host. So we review all of their medical records, ensuring compliance with immunizations and so forth. This brings us to how we support district safety. So our school nurses are dedicated members of building-based crisis response teams and crisis go teams. We play a vital part when necessary in threat assessment as well as in field practices. Our work also includes annual reviews of the emergency operations plan and our medical and behavioral health emergency response plan, ensuring that we're well prepared and equipped to handle any situation that may arise. The nursing team members all became certified stop the bleed instructors, and together with Captain Bortolato from Scituate Fire, we held stop the bleed training and staff across the district earlier this year. We are really lucky here in Scituate to have so many community partners to collaborate with for our student care, safety planning, and learning opportunities. Partnerships promote wellness initiatives, health education, support emergency planning, and provide experiences for our future nurses that we'll talk about more in a minute. I'd like to share more detail on two of my favorite collaborations I was able to be part of this year. The first was a training day for our bus and van drivers. We spent a day together at the Emergency Operations Center along with Fire Chief Mark Donovan, where we provided CPR, AED training, EpiPen training, seizure care for our transportation staff, and finished with lots of time for their safety Q&A. It was a great day. It was really feedback was incredible, and it's something that could make an annual honor.
The second was a CPR class for staff that we offered last month at the town library. Following a well-attended CPR class that we offered on a November PPD back in 24, I got a lot of requests to continue these types of offerings. So I sent out a staff survey, and what resulted was 201 staff members replying saying, please have more classes. So with the support of central office, last month, we launched the first of what will be 3 sessions per year, so that we will have 45 additional staff members trained in CPR annually or recertified. And currently we have 65 staff members across our district CPR certified, which are great numbers. Another way the nursing team impacts district and community is by helping the next generation of nurses learn. This is our second year partnering with Mr. Ranieri's interim program. One high school senior heading to nursing school spent some time with me on the nursing team. Part of this coordinating of this internship is working with our partners to facilitate learning about opportunities. This year, our town social worker, town public health nurse, our school physician provided some of those opportunities. And on the horizon, we have an exciting partnership with Mass College of Pharmacy's nursing program. Scituate Public Schools will be acting as a clinical site to host 2 senior nursing students over a 10-week period in the fall. And we are happy to share our collective 199 years of nursing experience from various backgrounds. We're super excited about that. So we all have challenges in our departments, and one that we've had for a while is our small but mighty sub list, which is not a challenge unique to Scituate. But I'm happy to report that we no longer have this. Thanks to central office and your school, where we were able to increase that sub nurse rate, and we also do something that I'm told many don't do, offer a robust orientation period for sub nurses. We feel really strongly that you are basically trying to run clinic solo. We want you to know our kids. We want you to know what specific medical plans our students have. Some students who require specialized care, and we want people to feel comfortable about that best care possible. So we're really proud of that orientation process that we have. And our district now has 19 names on some list. It's incredible. About them, those 100. So we appreciate that. Oh, this slide is bittersweet. I just wanted to take a minute to celebrate our Cushing Elementary nurse, Linda Mardus. She's retiring at the end of June. She is a loved and trusted member of our school for the past 21 years. She will be greatly missed, but the only thing that's something I think that's staying out is that she's already signed up to sub for us. So we're really happy about that. Congratulations to Linda, and we thank her from the bottom of our hearts for all she does and has done both the years here and at district. In closing, by caring for hundreds of students and staff daily, ensuring regulations and policies are being followed, assisting in safety planning and training, helping provide learning opportunities for the next generation of nursing professionals, the nursing department serves a little bit for townwide public health. Our team does not just manage health offices, but we actively build a safer, healthier district network alongside our school health and safety partners and our local communities. We take pride in our contributions and are committed to making a positive impact on our district. Very much. Department that we're working in. It's small and mighty. Yeah. That's okay. Orientation piece of something to hope that you guys are doing that. Good for kids and so probably good for you. Somebody who is the risk of PPA. Everything we have to do. I'm curious though, what is the stock that we? I mean, I think I have an idea. What stock we bring the stock? Provide. So it was in our classroom. Thank you for including the data. I think it's really impossible to know that number without knowing that number. So anytime you want. It's really interesting to see just the volume of work that you all are doing in the school. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah, this was a great presentation. Yeah. Yes. We have our
26-27 school year elementary books. Elementary principals.
Good evening, I'm Mary Oldak, principal at Jenkins Elementary, and the elementary principals are here tonight to present to you the updates for our elementary student handbook for next school year. Principal Shula was unable to be with us tonight, but this is a very collaborative process with all 4 elementary schools at the same handbook at all 4 schools. And every year we look at our handbook to see what needs to be updated. We consult with the economics department, the technology department, special education, transportation, sometimes even the middle school, making sure that we're in alignment with what the students can expect as they move on from elementary to middle school as well. So we're going to go through the updates, the summary that you have, and we're going to just start with the go in order of the pages. So just starting with the cover, every year we update the graphic, and we now have the traditional Scituate S, the cover, and updated the years. On page 6, there is an update on the caregiver engagement, just that we are now using Parent Square to send families updates via email and text, and that families and caregivers are encouraged to download the Parent Square app. On page 9, there was a phrase, a sentence added around recess and safety considerations being taken into advisement when the feasibility of outdoor recess is being determined. We added this because we do get questions, especially this winter with all the cold that we had, about what our criteria is for indoor recess. And now with the heat, also what our criteria may be heat as well. So all the schools use, for example, the National Weather Service chart that is an indoor recess if it feels like is below 20, and that is a combination of duration and temperature and wind speed on this chart, and within that. These are the things that we take into consideration. On page 9, also just updating our report card dates for next school year. And on page 10, our half days are from 8:55 to 11:25. Breakfast and lunch are served. Lunch being served is new next school year. Typically, we haven't offered lunch on half days, just always we do have breakfast. But this is going to be a change next year, that we will have lunch, and some of the younger grades are required to actually eat in the cafeteria. So we're all planning on that in our master schedule since we look forward next year. Moving on to technology, on page 17, there were 2 updates. The most notable is that the change from last year to this year is that 5th grade no longer takes Chromebooks home, that they stay in school, and that they're stored in the class charging part K through 5. We still have the one-on-one initiative. All of our students have access to a one-on-one Chromebook, but they do not go home any longer. This has been really significant in terms of a reduction in alerts that we've been receiving from our student security tools that stand for worrisome searches or language of documents. Just to give you an example, at Jenkins, at 5th grade class, social studies was researching the Bill of Rights and the right to bear arms. That got flagged. What is one? And so what's going on in 5th grade? But it was easily explained. But significant reduction now that the kids are not taking those home at night and over the weekends. We used to
get Alberts in the evenings, on the weekends, with families. And that's been a really positive change for their online safety. And also there's been a noticeable drop in frontal damage from not being transported to them. Appreciate that. And then the next update was that the language around Google tools was simplified just because there were a number of tools that our fifth graders, K-5 do not have access to, such as email. Doesn't start just this grade. And moving on to technology on page 18, I think you'll hear about artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence in all of our handbooks, and that it is not, it's prohibited. The use of it is prohibited, except when given specific permission by the teacher in accordance with our policies. And taking that one step further, using AGI or AI to harass, intimidate, or bully another student is a violation of our district policies for bullying. And any questions on those sections before I pass it on to?
Hello, I'm Christine Schumann, I'm principal of Academy School. I'm going to just walk us through some of the changes to the wellness city and the handbook for next year. On page 20, the first paragraph there didn't really change too much. It just deals with when you should be when you're trying to fever, over 3s or greater, vomiting and diarrhea, respiratory or flu symptoms, and that they should be 4 hours without the use of fever reducing medication. That really hasn't changed. We just changed the term to caregiver, be more consistent with the rest of the document. It's the second paragraph where we wanted to acknowledge that sometimes vomiting and diarrhea is not caused by an infectious disease. And I think that causes some confusion on parents of when they need to keep their child home. So this section here just outlines that and says that in these cases, the nurse will evaluate each situation individually with that guidance. On page 21, this is about a life-threatening allergy policy. We have the main policy, but we added this section, which just states that we do have protocols that's formed in the district. And we want to be sure that parents do reach out to the school nurse and staff in order to review those policies and how they pertain specifically to their child. On page 22, this was about medication given. This just became a little bit more specific, particularly the last section here, which says, please note that medication will be delivered by an adult, but there's exceptions to that. So things like EpiPens, asthma, diabetics, do not have to be on. For page 22, we just added to the policy just to say that we should send the physical into the school nurse and certain grade levels that really require that, but it didn't specifically say we send it to. So just those were changes to the wellness policy. Do you have any questions about that?
Off the top, I'm just going to talk about just a couple of quick changes we made to the section on ECC. As you know, next year our morning program is going to continue as a 4-day program with our 3-year-olds, with the afternoons going to a 5-day program. So with that, we did have a fee increase adding the extra day. So we did note that in the handbook. So the 4-day program will stay the same with $2,500 fee, but the afternoon 4-year-olds will go to $4,500. So that's in there. And then we also just added some language over consideration taken into advisement about outdoor recess, similar to what we did for K-5. The ECC doesn't write too much about impervious tests as maybe the others do, because the littles get so cold and it takes too long to get it done. And as you know, at Longtuck, we have an inside gym for them, so it's not as much of an issue, but we did note that in the handbook. Questions?
Thanks so much. Secondary handbooks. Dee and.
Good evening. I feel like there are three chunks that has been updated. The first one is just administrative names and dates in the beginning from pages 5 through 9. The second piece deals with artificial intelligence, specifically naming violations to harassment or bullying or intimidation using artificial intelligence. Calling that out as one of our tier 3 offenses. That is on page 12. Page 19, really kind of defining what by artificial intelligence at this time, and providing the instruction that it can only be used with permission of a teacher, and in accordance with the policy that's there. So those chunk number 2. And chunk number 3 relates to updates to the health services that by the problems specific administration medicine. So no major changes this year, but I think that artificial intelligence piece, including that plus educating students as well.
Dealing with policy. Yeah. Like, oh, those rules. The things in the same.
And that's why, I mean, I think education,
Special.
yes. And I think that it's, I would agree that I think middle school, I'm so happy to hear that Mary doesn't have much to do with, things being flagged. In the middle school, we continue, and this is the time where we do need to educate. It's nice to have a policy to back it up, but along with that policy, I think, I've continued to have conversations how to be educate, not just students, but families in the community around things like bullying prevention, but also things like fakes and whatnot. So,
Well, I need to look at that. I know when families sign this, you have to sign off of your residence. I wonder if in that communication, there would be an opportunity to call out specific pieces. You know how like when you're signing off something, I know we don't have fancy one where you can like initial, but like maybe there's something that actually have to, or you actually have to control course. You know, or if there's like another way to maybe put this on the one page where you do sign to call out a few specific sections, even with bold, then, or like we'd like to call your attention to this. Make sure you have a conversation with the kid about it. You know, if we're looking for resources, you have them. It could be an opportunity.
Yeah, to your point, I mean, it might be worth having a separate AI
Yes,
family.
I agree.
Just pouring out, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a whole nother document. So
Yeah.
that like, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
More the.
Yeah, that's true. I like the idea of like. Having something about, like, yeah. But on rolling presentation of something. Gathering about. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. High school handbook.
Okay, like, Mr. Beatty, I don't have a ton of changes. School handbook, Scituate High School. We changed and added honor roll and high honors. It actually came from our school council. Someone in our school council had asked to put it in, so that it's there. And it's students with honor roll earn A's and B's the term. Students with high honors earn A's for the term. So just to make that clear distinction. On page 36, graduation requirements in math and English, we laid out or mapped out that it's 16 credits, which always has been in English and math. But any course that you take outside of Scituate High School will not be included on the Scituate High School transfer. In other words, you have to take and pass 4 years of English and math to graduate. We're having some students that are challenging themselves and taking college math classes and things like that, which they can go ahead and do on their own. We don't use that as one of our 4 courses towards graduation. So we put it in the page 40, just as Mr. Beatty had mentioned, all our AI proper use guidelines with there, use of artificial intelligence, and that it's not to be used to harass and advantage of the students. Then on page 42, we reworded our SAT language because it has changed, it's updated. Testing. The athletic side, same idea, just changes that were more or less a word here and a word there. Page 2 under player eligibility, athletic fee, because we don't charge athletic fees. On page 12, the student scholar athlete section, for senior, and that just simply means that a team can choose a student athlete for a grade point average. It doesn't have to be senior. Junior has the highest average, and the junior can be chosen. On page 19, under academic support, just add the word athletic trainer because it wasn't included in there. And everyone else listened except the athletic. So, right, what should we do? Yeah. You want to send?
We don't know.
You send it for the big one. We're committee's gonna vote at the next meeting.
I'll discuss it.
That's the athletics handbook for students, not coaching. Any questions about the high school handbook?
Thank you.
I just had one doable reminder for all of them, which is we're about to have a new school committee member and all of your titles got updated. Right, you know, we do special ed, things like that. So a lot of the books at the beginning, all of those. I think it's something people just try to skim over. But some should just look at those one more time before they, yeah, just because I think they're all in various. Thanks. All right, report of the policy subcommittee. That's right. All right. So we met last week on the 28th. And we had some guests join us. We had Kelly Bell, Greg Ranieri, and Tammy Rundle review our wellness policy. So this is something that we are required to review every 3 years. So this is a scheduled review of the policy. They described a very robust process that they use starting in the fall to review the policy. In our memo, I linked some of the documents. Massachusetts has a set of tools that they provide, which is a rubric, that they use that gives both a checklist to assess what is in the policy and also a rubric to assess our implementation of the policy. So it's pretty comprehensive fronts. And they as a team did that for our policy. And so they came and shared their updates with us. Their updates are linked in that memo. They're in red. There's nothing extremely substantive to call anything off. That's true, you should. We did talk a little bit about implementation of the policy, because of course, that's where the rubber meets the road, that's what really matters. We learned that with the schedule change at Gates, the PE class time was slightly reduced from what it had been. Which is just something that we're still in compliance with that, so. We did talk a little bit about how not all classrooms are fully in compliance with being aware of policies and procedures. And that this is an opportunity for additional teaching perhaps for some of our parent and caregiver leaders, like the classroom parents, PTO leaders, and maybe school principals. This could be an opportunity to kind of, to get some more awareness from what it means to have allergy in your classrooms. And
Can you describe, if you are able to, what that, like, what are we missing?
well, it's just, we have a policy saying that we can't have food, for example.
Right.
And some classrooms are very good about adhering to that policy, but I think sometimes parents may be unaware that we have that policy, they may have missed that memo, and, try to bring in cupcakes for it. Yeah. And so it's like, we gotta just make sure people understand that we do have that policy, why we have that policy, what are the alternatives. I think once people know that we have the policy in mind, then they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but I think sometimes people remembering back to their own school days when it's like, oh, it's my kid's birthday, I'm gonna send cupcakes. Right, I just don't think, it's kind of goes back to the conversation we just had, this is all in handbooks.
Yeah.
And how close it is.
Or, I'm thinking of just my own classrooms where it's like, there's a really strong emphasis in the beginning of the year by the building nurse to communicate and be allergy aware of your child's classroom. But I think as the year goes on and it may have gone to the back of your mind. And so, yeah, then you sort of thinking about a birthday or celebration. And so I don't know if the change could be just like maybe a reminder or something as we come back from break.
Yeah, and for people who are organizing a lot of the class parties, those are often the PTOs or the class parents, and so that's where that would be to kind of educate. You have a lot of people at once who tend to be sort of the ones who have their type of thing. Yeah. The occasion is to make sure that we know. Policy. What was that? And so you want to talk about our seat policies? Or like, these are crucial.
So we, took the C policies, we divided them amongst the three of us. We all did our sections and make up the recommendations. This was not, not a heavy lift, there are not a lot of lot of changing to gender neutral pronouns. If you look at policy CBD, CBE. Basically just aligned everything. Yes. It's all simpler. You tend to be more wordy. So CBD is superintendent's contract. So it's mass. So the evaluation.
Yeah, evaluation is actually an example where we added in a line, the one in red and mask column. That one is not in masks policy. That was one we wanted to add in. So I think it's important to just note that we don't always just take masks wholesale. We do them carefully and think like what might be missing. Yeah, it was something that we felt was missing and we thought was good. We wanted to add. So that's an example of where we actually take masks. That was mostly good, but add that on the list. And then, because that had been in our old policy, but we had the beginning of the fiscal year instead of academic. That would be goal setting by, which we don't do and doesn't make sense. So we changed it to academic. So for example, I think that's like just to call out an example of like, we're not just always wholesale. Oh, mask looks good. Let's move on. Yeah, for sure.
Policy CC. We don't,
Yeah, it was incomplete also. It doesn't list all of the
Yeah.
goals, and so It just updated. Wait. Third.
Staff relations and just kind of. About, staff relations. See, we change gender control pronouns. CH, no changes. CHK.
Or combining with CHC. That was the main change.
Which is what? Yeah, CHB, we took out, this Maria pointed out. A lot of these policies, we, next doesn't have one, if there's something.
Right. Seems like they consolidate a bit and get more concise and
Yeah.
clear.
But we're still committing to the procedures like that, we already have.
Yeah.
Yeah. But.
Our old policy used to say, for some reason, focused on just grades 9 through 12. But we moved to do all the handbooks, so basically the change was remove that and then stop. So it's not, it's just a bit. Yeah.
CL administrative reports, so.
Seems noted elsewhere even. Yeah. Yep, it was a relatively short section. Good, so no voting, just discussion. Right? Yep, so our goal would be to vote on this next. And then we did look at the mass every year does recommend a number of changes to kind of different policies that they've been following over the course of the year. We started to look at those and then we immediately realized that we were to. So we decided to look at them more in depth at our final meeting. And our hope would be to bring those edits to the group. So they're a little more, they're not. If they had been like, oh, it's just a simple change, that would be one thing, but there were some meaty ones in there and we felt like. So we'll do that. And we'll keep going.
Your final policy.
Our final.
Yeah.
policy. Yeah. On top. Yeah.
No, I was just like the
Working
11th, did it make sense?
Yeah, the
for
11th
Monday?
is not a day that you would have.
Besides.
Yeah. That's it. Great fun. So good work. Okay. No warrants in our backup this evening.
Just the one.
Okay, any other subcommittee reports? It's, I don't know.
Zoom focus.
Yeah, maybe an audit focus. Dr. Rob already updated us on the naming earlier. Task force. I will mention, Bree and I are going to try to get together to continue the work that we started. I can usually do months ago. Just to, as we're sort of going into a new year and everything, just wanted to look at and all of liaisons. Subcommittee, have it all in one document. Yeah. All the like extras ready. Like, for them, yeah, you know, have it on the place, especially if we prepared it on cover of our fitting, right? We'll have that, put that in free law. Yeah, yeah, like we'll be doing welcome document. Yeah, but good for everyone. We'll have to do our reorg.
Okay, a few weeks.
Because this time it doesn't align with meetings, so that.
Right. Yeah, but it's really- that's good for the.
It's great. They don't have to go get it born in. Yeah, I've never seen it happen. Lovely. Okay. Okay. we'll do some of that, send it to you all, at our next meeting on 15th. And that's that. Almost that. Yep. Oh, Peter, we have a little gift for you.
Oh.
Yeah, we would love for you to open it right now. Yes,
Oh, it's heavy.
yeah, that's.
You wanna help, you wanna help me on it? He's very good at opening.
I bet,
Come
yeah.
on,
You don't have to come on, no? Yeah.
yeah, right there.
Yeah, open it. Let's see what it is.
I might have.
Hold on, hold on. The present. This is my last meeting. You're gonna be sad, I know. What is it? TV? No. Oh,
Free to
whoa,
watch
it's a
it.
picture.
Meetings. That would been an amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
I remember
Like
we
it's the
asked
high
you what your
school.
favorite school was.
Yeah,
This is why.
that's awesome. Show the camera. Wow, that's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's great. I'll actually.
Yeah, it's the proper blue.
It is the proper too.
So,
It
I
is.
told her to judge it up.
And the trees are.
The way we envision it looks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Last time for people to. Oh, yeah, one last time, Ryder. Let's do it.
All right, Zach, motion to adjourn at 8:28.
Favor.
All right.